Hi, I'm Michelle. This is my so-called handmade life. I have a blog by the same name, and that's my name on Instagram. On Ravelry, I am Mamatronic. This is a knitting, crochet, crafting, whatever I feel like making or talking about kind of podcast where I talk to you and hopefully you respond, and whatever you say in the comments, I discuss in the next episode. And we're kind of just having as much of a back and forth conversation as we can. My goal is for you to feel like you can turn this on and kind of, I don't know, zone out if you want. And it's like knitting with your extra chatty friend, maybe. And when I do get time to knit or crochet lately, I'm often thinking about your comments, the projects you recommend, the things you're making, the new skills you're learning, all of that. You're on my mind quite a bit. So it's like I'm having my knit along too. You know, I like the community we have here, is what I'm trying to say. I appreciate all of your participation in the last 2 months. It was the Stash Busting the New Year make-along. And our goal was to use as much of our junk as we could and try not to buy more. So a lot of us have over the years collected, and we have like these mounds of yarn, and rather than digging through it and using it, we're like seeing the next new thing that comes out and we're impulse spending. Or it's just easier, I don't feel like digging for this, I'll just buy it and I'll get it in a few days. I stopped doing that a while back, but I wasn't working through my stash as much. My life got really busy. So I'm trying to really focus on using a lot of what I have, and kind of just, now that I've had some space from impulse spending on crafting stuff, I've been looking back at why do we do this? Why have I done this? And you guys were along for the ride in January and February. And so the last few episodes, we've talked a lot about consumerism, knee-jerk buying. Why do we do it? What are we filling a void, or is it just training from marketing or habits? And I've really appreciated all of your insight that you've shared about yourselves with me. I just think it's not always an easy thing to say, like, oh, sometimes I just don't think and I buy something. I impulse spend. It sounds like a lack of control, and I think it's, I don't know. I appreciate when people can honestly talk about things like that. So it's been very helpful to me, and I want you to know that if you've commented at all, you've been super helpful to everyone else in this group, because I've heard so many remarks by different viewers on Instagram, Ravelry, or YouTube, how you're responding to each other's comments and you're saying, yes, that's exactly how I feel, or this has helped me so much. I unsubscribed to a bunch of different businesses that were emailing me, and that's going to help me not overspend. And we were all like, there's this spectrum of the consumerism in our crafting world. We were all somewhere on the spectrum, right? So I haven't been tempted to overspend in, I don't know, over a year, 2 years maybe, maybe even more. But my life, like life changes, made that super easy. I just didn't have time to even craft anymore. But not everyone had like a big change that made it like something that kind of forced them into it. A lot of you are like just now trying to start saying no and stop spending, and others just looking at how you spend and being maybe more mindful of it. And something Eunice said on commenting on the last episode, that, you know, having to kind of step back from certain podcasts for a time and unsubscribe just because there's a temptation. There's so many good things out there. It's really tempting to want to have that right now and make that right now and do that right now when maybe it's not wisest for your situation. And I was just thinking how we talk about it like, you know, it's some sort of gambling problem that we have. And I don't know anyone who's like spent serious money on yarn and harmed themselves with it. But I think because crafting, like hand crafting, is so mindful, and we're so focused on mindfulness in this community, that when we mindlessly spend, it irks us more than maybe it would, I don't know, someone else. That was true for me. It like bothers me when I feel like I didn't really think about that. I like kind of ceded control of this, purchase and this decision. I don't like that. And a lot of us are focused on kind of sustainability and not wasting. And so our crafting habits kind of don't support the lifestyle choices we want to make. And so we're trying to change that too. So all of you have really helped one another. I just want you to know. And you've really encouraged me. Like, I didn't say I wasn't going to buy anything, but I was super tempted the last 2 months to buy with my birthday points, birthday coupon from Lion Brand. And I'll do it one day. I didn't want to, just out of respect for everyone in the make-along who's trying not to spend anymore. Like, you're right in the throes of changing that, your brain's wiring to impulse spend. But what I saw that I wanted, and that's the thing, I have birthday points, they'll wait. They can wait. I have like a year to use them. I finished my rainbow baby blanket, and I had a full skein of Color Theory in Canyon left over, and this was kind of a groovy orange color. And I did like the weight of this yarn on my Spring League sleeveless hoodie by Alexandra Tavel. So I thought I will eventually use my Lion Brand points for the Senna Stripe sweater, since I already have one of these. This is by Whistle and Wool. And it's like not a mistake rib, it's like a broken rib pattern with striping. And it only takes one of the Canyon. So I need the others because I don't have enough of any other color that would look good. And I like this color palette. I like these colors together. But what I can do, since I already own One-skein, is if I were going to buy, I'm not sure with how this is sized. She's got some generous ease here, but I would want a really generous ease sweater. I would knit a large, but since I have One-skein here, I might order the kit for a medium and just change the configuration of how many skeins of what color I get. Since I would have, I would already have the Canyon, I would make the Canyon in the kit another color that I would normally need, say, 4 of for a large, and I only get 3. I would make the Canyon that same color. Do you see what I'm saying? So I would get away with buying a smaller kit and spending less money, and you get the pattern free when you buy the kit on the Lion Brand site. So that's just a little tip. I'm sure you've thought of it, but when you do have a leftover and you want to use it, that's kind of a good way to do it. But I'm not doing it yet. I'm waiting for 40% off, y'all. I don't guess I said. I told you there would be some sort of prizes at the end of this make-along. And it would be Instagram based. But I decided to do an Instagram drawing and a Ravelry drawing because through the course of the 2 months, a lot of you have revealed that Instagram's just not great for you right now. It makes you want to spend. It makes you want to drop what you're doing, start something new, then drop it, start something new, and you're not able to be mindful, finish projects, use what you have as easily. So you're taking a break from Instagram, and you're on Ravelry. And then others of you said Ravelry was a problem, so you're off of it and you're on Instagram. So I decided to do a drawing from each. And Shauna of Shauna Stitches on Instagram won the Instagram drawing. And Shauna has been posting something, I think, every day of this make-along. She's doing like a personal challenge to use up her fiber stash, so she's been spending daily and then making quite a few projects also. So congrats to you, Shauna. She's been ultra productive the last 2 months. And you can pick any two patterns from Virginia Sattler Reimer and any from Albina McLaughlin, 2 from Albina McLaughlin. So 2 patterns from each, any patterns you want. I'll have talked to you already about it, and I'll give them to you via Ravelry. Then in the Ravelry drawing, Norma G won that, and so I'll have contacted you, Norma, by now, but it's 2 from Albina, 2 from Virginia, and any 2 you want, and I'll send them to you via Ravelry. I do know that Shauna's on Ravelry, so that's probably the easiest way to do the prizes. But everyone, thank you very much for participating. You encouraged me. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't personally right now struggling with the spending. Life has already taken care of that a while back, but it was hard when I was trying not to. I have been struggling with staying focused, and I've mostly just wanted to really kind of investigate, why is this kind of phenomenon happening to us? And it seems a lot of us all around the same time are feeling like, ugh, I've got too much stuff, I need to get rid of it. And I just wanted to think about it more, and I don't think I would have come to some of the conclusions I did if you hadn't been commenting. So thank you. And like I said, plenty of you have said, this is motivating me, so you've really helped each other. And basically, group hug is what I'm trying to say. All right, so my last question that I asked you guys was, do you have any good one-skein projects? So one-skein wonder projects. And several of you offered some. Oh, Ophelia mentioned the Be Simple Variations scarf, which is really a good one-skein wonder project because it looks good in a solid, but it's also the kind of scarf with kind of a mesh lace pattern, how do you call it, eyelets. It would look great with variegated. It's by Carolyn Glaus Todrink. So you can see, this is with a semi-solid, but a variegated would look awesome. Karen recommended, and we talked some about free patterns too, because several of us have been trying not to spend as much on patterns. I've cut back. I haven't stopped completely. But Karen mentioned Espace Tricot, and I'm going to have links to all of this in the notes. And then if YouTube cuts me off because I'm so link happy, I always have links to my blog post, and that will have every single thing linked. So that's where all the nerds go for the information. Espace Tricot, you probably know this, but their Ravelry free patterns are, it's just a huge catalog of patterns, all sorts of patterns, but lots of sweaters and shawls. So Karen recommended that, and I looked up a few just for my own funsies, like some ones that were good for one-skein. And I found this Vera Volte. It is for a lace skein. Okay, so you could do this with sock yarn, but you would need at least 2 skeins. But done with lace, it's really great. You see how large it is? Very airy. I love the fringe. That looks like a lot of fun, and it looks really good for in-between weather like we have, well, not like we have, but like the rest of the world has. And the other one was Mouton Noir. And I did see this a while back. It calls for one skein of, let me show it to you, one skein of boucle yarn, and it was a Julie Aslan's boucle, not bouquet, boucle that it calls for. And I actually have a skein of that from the, I don't know where, I might have gotten this from Firefly Fibers or something a while back when this pattern came out, I think. But it's a soft light gray. Orion is the name of it. Very, very soft boucle. So you know that boucle sweater I made? It was a very affordable boucle blend, but not quite as soft as this. This is a little softer. Let me look at the, yeah, and it's all natural. It says 70% alpaca, 30% Highland This is not a synthetic boucle, which is why it's extra soft. Boy, this would make a wonderful stuffed animal for a child. Anyway, that's something I do want to do. That's a good One-skein wonder project. And a few of you had talked about having just these odd skeins, and that's why we're talking about One-skein wonders. Just kind of finishing up ways to use what we've got. We've talked about large yardage projects. We've talked about little bitty scrap projects to use all the little minis, little bits and pieces that are left over. And this is for when you have like a One-skein thing and you're not sure what you want to do. Karen also has been making up her own little kind of slip stitch long shawl type poncho pattern, and it's one of those where it's like a long rectangle with a slit in the center. So you've got your rectangle, you've got a slit, you can put it around you, kind of wrap it like a poncho or like a shawl. And she's on her Instagram, she modeled several different ways of wearing it with a belt, part of it partially belted. It's just so lovely. It was like a big purple major large yardage project, and it was really beautiful. Looks really chic, and she just made it up. She was winging it. I love that. One thing that Puck mentioned was for One-skein projects or larger leftovers, you know, not tiny little scraps, house slippers are a really good project, and had several recommendations. I'm going to show you some of those now. The Magic Rectangle Slippers by Jess Copham. These are really cute. And if you sew a little leather bottom on them, little soles, like in the picture, oh, it's just adorable. And now her point in doing this was, yes, it's using up scraps, but also the kids' friends, visitors that come to the house. You know, it's cold in the winter, and they always appreciate having some clean little fresh slippers to put on, just like guest slippers. And I thought that's the neatest, most inviting thing. It makes me think of like people who have a guest room that's all tricked out with the best stuff and the best fun reads or serious reads and cool old VHS movies and a TV, you know, and the TV cabinet. You're going above and beyond, Puck, with slippers for everybody that comes in. That's a great idea for I don't know, making your house more homey and using up stash. And I did have this pattern faved on Ravelry. I do think it's a smart pattern. It's a good way to, and it's crochet. So the other one was Pixie Prancers. This is a drops pattern. And this one goes up more like a sock. And that would work with a highly variegated yarn. If you wanted a striping yarn, you could do whatever you want. This is kind of fun. A fun way to use scraps. But then I wanted to add a few recommendations to that. Ashley Ratnam has these cozy stripes, and they look fun. They've got striping, stockinette, and a little bit of garter. So that's a fun, you don't have to make them striping. You could just use one colorway, but I like how they're opposites. And I think that's a fun way to use your leftovers, and they're worsted weight. And then Christy Archer has her Simply Irresistible worsted socks. And here's what I like about these. You know, house shoes don't have to be like perfectly fitting, but these are really great socks for, you could use them for guests, but Christy developed them with a ribbed heel so that they could kind of sort of fit multiple sizes comfortably enough to knit as gifts for people that she wasn't quite sure what their sock size was. So let me show you how they look. And you can get an idea of what I mean by the ribbing on the heel. I've never seen anyone do that. I think that's very clever. I'm really excited to do this. They knit up fast with worsted weight. So they're very much like a house sock. And Puck, I'm wondering, I think I already shared this in the Ravelry thread, but it might be a fun way to use up a skein of worsted as a gift, or for a guest, you know, you don't really know what their foot size is, but probably close to one that would fit. This is a smart way to do it. And it goes up to adult extra large size from toddler size. So this would be a really great way to make gifts for people ahead of time. So let me share some of my personal One-skein Wonder projects of the past. And I'm just going to go through a bunch. This is Kelly McClure's Sockhead Slouch. And I've made Sockhead twice. I made a fun little pom-pom for this, but I'm going to be putting on a lot of hats. So the Sockhead, this was one skein of worsted weight yarn. This was a discontinued, it's no longer being sold, Jinx yarn. And this was one of the, like a Totoro colorway. Okay, I have the High Cliff hat by Melissa Schwashwery, which I showed you guys a while back. Am I putting it on right? Yeah. I'll show you the little cable, one skein of a super bulky. And this was just recycled yarn from something. The Durant cowl from, now this is, I don't know the amount of yardage I used for mine because it was recycled from a scarf in a store, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people have used Rasta from Malabrigo one skein, and it worked for them. I've seen several one skein projects in Ravelry, so I felt confident showing this one. And when it comes to super bulky yarn, one skein projects, they don't always look super cool. I think this looks super cool. So I definitely wanted to remind you, it's out there, and I wanted to kind of just share the things, the one skein projects that I still have that I enjoyed. Mostly they're hats, because a few years ago shawl patterns just started going to 2 and 3 and 6 and 8 skeins, so that's just kind of how it goes. The Seafarer's cap by Two of Wands. That's this one. My hair is going to be so bad when I'm done. This is the one that I had as a giant cone head, remember? So I'm still wearing this. Well, I was. The few cold nights we had to walk dogs, I wore that. And also by Two of Wands. While I'm at it, I may as well show. I think this one was the Voyager. This was in the Lion brand. It's a yarn with some camel in it. And it's really smooth. It's very soft. It's softer than, you know, just regular wool. Same concept. A large brim to flop over, you know, your ears. But still a little space at the top, and you can make it as fitted as you want. Yeah, it's really soft. That was one skein. No, you know what? I think that was 2 skeins. Yeah, just forget about that one. That was 2 skeins. I just saw it as I was coming upstairs and I grabbed it. I thought, ooh, that's one. Okay, We Were Seeds by Riza Knits. I gave mine away. I made it for someone. But I do want to show you this pattern because I found it to be a super enjoyable one skein shawl. And because there's quite a bit of lace, it's still a very large shawl. So she's wearing it sort of mysterious and hood-like there. But the fun thing about this is it's sort of a shawl that tells a story, and it just goes from one interesting stitch pattern to another. Don't know if you can see that there. You don't get bored. You can't get bored making it. So it's a one skein project. Would be a great palette cleanser between large, kind of involved projects. You do have to look at your notes, your pattern, because the stitch is changing, but I found it just thoroughly enjoyable. And I wanted to mention it. I always want to go back and make one for myself. I will one of these days because I really liked it, but I made it with someone else in mind. Another one that I made was Quadri from Michelle Wong, which is a really nice, more intricate cable pattern. That's one of those patterns that just says winter. I wanted to do a super cabled winter sweater this year. That was one of my winter goals. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I'm already in short sleeves and shorts, but we'll see, maybe. Renfrew by Jane Richmond is another one I gave away. I made and gave to someone, but it was very fun to make. It's got a little something there that keeps it from being just a straight up beanie. And it's a fun little faux cable, which is a neat little technique to learn. And the reverse stockinette of the hat itself is just neat. It's an interesting knit. It looks very interesting. Oh, and you see how pretty it looks with a semi-solid. Drake by Shannon Cook, which I might have. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah. Let me show you hers because it's got a very clear stitch pattern. Mine is not as clear because I'm using some alpaca. This is one of my first yarn purchases. It was someone I was following their blog. Spider Woman Knits, I think, is her Ravelry account, and she had a little shop and she would sell her yarn from her alpaca, Indy and Hayden. I don't remember who this yarn was from. It's in my Ravelry notes, but this is a fun hat to make. Of course, it's super soft being alpaca. And it's a special memory for me because this is from when I really first started getting online as a knitter. There's the Skyping hat by Haldora J. I called it the gaming hat, but then my son didn't really like it, so then I called it the shaming hat. But I'm just going to show you a picture of it. I'm sure he'll love having a early teen, preteen photo online. That's little Potsy when he had more dark hair and less gray hair. That was actually a really nice hat. I don't know why he didn't love it. I gave it to someone else who loved it. It worked. He doesn't really wear hats though, to be fair. Just once in a while during a really cold soccer game. Laura and Maddie. That was from that really great Great Northern Knits, that Twin Peaks themed knitting book by Teresa Gregorio and Leah Kokari Swift. But this pattern was about Laura and Maddie, and you know they were cousins that looked like twins, so you know they're like alike but not quite alike. Anyway, super warm knits. My little thumbs look kind of pokey there. My first time to make, I think this was my first pair of true mittens to knit. Maybe not. Anyway, I was going to talk about that pattern book again sometime because there's something I want to make out of it soon. This was by Annie Rowden. And that was a fun Jinx yarn colorway. I gave that to my daughter. It was just a one-of-a-kind colorway. The Dresden Beret. I have a couple of those, but this is the one I have handy. And my last one I showed you not long ago, I think I made a little more beret flop for it, but you could totally do that if you wanted. But this took one skein of DK, and I used one skein of worsted for the more recent one. Also Goodnight, this is just a series of Goodnight Day hats because they were all one skein. This York Bobble Toque was one skein of Malabrigo Rios, I think. Sorry, I'm picking the spot hair off of it. So there's this. Very nice. I've made a few of those. I don't remember which it is. It's Goodnight Day. Yeah, I don't know. I'll flash it. I made it when I made the Durand, obviously, with the same. And, you know, you can have it be a little bigger if you want that way. I was really running short, but this would have taken a skein of a super bulky. This is Goodnight Day. This is a limited edition Madeline Tosh yarn for Hohi and Vera Knit America, or whatever it was called. Mockingjay was the color. I guess it was due to the Hunger Games. You can wear it with a lot of slouch, or you can fold the brim up. Petawawa. This is probably my favorite of all of them. I just really like this color. This was also Jinx Yarns. This is the Elora toque, and I did little, dots on it. So it could be One-skein, but if you want to add the contrast color dots with some leftovers, it doesn't take much. Another Seafarer's cap, same difference from Two of Wands. This was kind of Madeline Tosh color from back when I very first discovered Madeline Tosh. So I have these. This was a definitely a One-skein. I did this with chunky, like very old Lion Brand chunky yarn. Wool Ease chunky, and they discontinued that. Now they have Hue and Me, which is similar, but it's made for a super bulky, and I just did this with a bulky yarn, and I just kind of changed the pattern out to make it work. It's Jane Richmond, and I'll put the pattern name down here. Don't know why I forgot. I've made a ton of them though, and I like this for when I would run. Before it made my migraines worse, I would wear this when I run because it is machine washable. I wouldn't dry it, but I could wash it if it got sweaty. So it's just a little seed stitch hat. This is another one. Gosh, I don't have it on here. It's one of my first projects. It's like a little newsboy cap from you like this super variegated yarn? It's a newsboy cap from the Stitch and Bitch books, and you get a little piece of mesh, which my mesh has been broken to a million pieces from use. Get a little piece of mesh and you knit a little shape for it, little disc shape. You slip it in and sew it up, and I was just really pleased with this. I brought this so many places when I would be outside, hiking or whatever. I went to Peru with me a couple of times. Very handy little cabled hat. And honestly, it's a pretty wildly variegated color for me, but and it would be so much more wearable if it was a more semi-solid, but it's special. This is the Felicity hat that was super popular because Carrie Russell wore a mega slouchy hat like this before it was ultra trendy and everywhere, and somebody reknit I'll say who it is here, did the pattern and made up a pattern inspired by it. And I like the amount of ribbing that I did here. So it could be pulled down and flipped up to keep your ears extra warm, or you could wear it super slouchy. And this was like in school team colors when I would go watch, my kids play games and stuff. This is that twist headband by Goodnight Day. This would be a One-skein project, a good little ear warmer. It is called the Simcoe headband, which I'm not sure if this is free on Ravelry or not available, but you can find similar things on Ravelry. I think this was one of the first Goodnight Day books. And I found that an interesting little challenge to understand what I was doing with these. Like, I didn't trust the pattern because it didn't seem to make sense. I'd never made a little twisted knit like this, so that was fun. Saguaro Blossom hat by by Anne Podlesak. Really cute. This is in Circus Tonic Handmade Hullabaloo Erin. Antarctic Pryan. Wow, I don't remember a lot about making this. This was during a super busy time in my life. But it's super nice. This is Oak Crust by Vanessa Townley. And I think I used a tiny bit of a second skein to make this, but it was from Knit Picks Capra DK, and I find the Capra is only 123 yards. So if you were using like Cascade 220 or a normal worsted weight yarn, you would have plenty of yarn to make this, because I just used a tad of the other skein to make this little beanie top. In fact, I might have made 2 of these. Yeah, no, that's what it did. Nice, huh? It's cute. It's really cute. It's a cute little touch to have this knot on the top. Very soft though. Capra is very soft. But yeah, so I would call this a one-skein project. I used yarn that required a tiny bit more, but if you use just a regular amount of worsted, you would be fine. 2 shawls that were one-skein by Libby Johnson. This is Industry. This was in January Yarns. Really pretty greens. And this just required one skein. And it's called Industry. See? Like so. And then this one is also that Mockingjay colorway, and it is rattan. And I really enjoyed making this. I really liked the graphic look of all the lines. It's a really good crescent shape for wearing, you know, like a scarf. And so, and it looks good either way. So these were Libby Johnson patterns, see? All right, that took forever. I'm gonna be editing that like crazy. Okay, those are some one-skein projects that worked for me. Oh, here's one more one-skein project. This is kind of a fun one. It's by Veronique Avery. It's lace photo mats. Oh, there's some sun damage on that photo. That's my children when they were little. I made that for my grandmother, and she put it in this frame. But it's a sweet pattern. I think it came from one of those Melanie Falick books of like Christmas gifts. Anyway, I'll hold it up closer so you can see, possibly if there's not too much glare from glass and glass. Aren't they sweet? And so now I have it in my room. All right. Do you want to know what I've been working on? I've been working on some large yardage projects, you know. So let me tell you first about my baby blanket. I cannot look at this without busting out laughing. At first glance, it looks really good, really perfect, right? It's not. I was decreasing stitches accidentally as I went back and forth. I don't know how to do, like it was a half double crochet. I know I can do that, but like with color work, I was messing up and I decreased. So here's the rainbow blanket. You get the basic colors. Aren't they great? That was all Color Theory. It was like Admiral Caper, I don't remember. Maybe Dijon, I don't know, and that cayenne, and then cream. But I don't know if you can tell, but because I decreased from the top down, it started to make almost a wedge. So I blocked it. I tried to adjust to let this side be fairly straight. And what I had was a wedge here that was just like nothing. So I went in and I tried to kind of freeform crochet like with short rows and create a wedge shape, which, you know, was somewhat successful, somewhat. But just still really hard to see what I was doing. And then as I went around making the border, I was very, I changed the stitches I did on the border depending on what weird stuff I was trying to fix here. I went to just like, I don't know, a little chain stitch, and then I went back to little double crochet, and then clusters on one side. I mean, it is all over the place. So I don't know if you can tell how wonky it is. Can you see kind of the flared edges? But I'm done. I'm not redoing it. I can't redo it. I can't in time for the baby to come. And I told her it's imperfect. When you wrap this around a child, you won't be able to see how weird it is. So I'm just going to laugh it off and include something else in the box besides this. And that's all I got. Now, I immediately started the last baby blanket I was going to do. I have since then found out one more friend is having a baby. I think I've got one more baby knit or baby crochet in me, and then I think I'm done. But this was the Sasquatch colorway from Lion Brand Mandala, and I am just doing double crochet, back and forth, back and forth. So it's just going to be very simple. You can see here I've already changed into the next color, and I'm actually pleased with how quickly these skeins change color in something that's fairly small for a baby blanket. This is actually maybe a little bit wider than the other, but I think that other one I got really tight crocheting the intarsia. I mean, what was I thinking? I had like so many balls of yarn hanging from it at once. I've never done that kind of color work, and it was when I was laying down a color and picking up a new color, I was somehow decreasing. I wasn't putting my hook in where I needed to. So this is going to be way more straightforward. It might not even require any kind of border. I'm just going to go and go and go. And when I have a nice size blanket, I'm going to stop and I'm going to make a little blanket for her daughter's baby doll, so they can both have a baby in a blanket. And then I'm going to make one more baby blanket, and I'm out. I'm done. No more babies. The other big yardage project that I've been working on is Jane Richmond's Fernwood cardigan with this raisin woolly thick and quick colorway. I had like 6 or 7 balls of this, and I wasn't sure what I would do with them. And when Fernwood came out, I was like, oh, and I'm trying not to buy yarn. Oh, it sucks. But I realized I have enough thick and quick. And I can't show you what it looks like on me because I am right now working on the button band. So it's all bunched up, but it does fit. And let me show you what the seed stitch looks like. I don't even know, because of this dark color, it's going to be really hard to see. Can you see the texture? There's texture with tweed little neps in there, and then there's the texture of the seed stitch. I'm trying to make it with a little ease. I'm doing a 38-inch bust, I think. Also, this is like the kind of, like almost like a house coat cardigan you would wear open, most likely. I do think I have buttons for it. I haven't dug them up yet, but I'm excited about this. I mean, I don't have much left. Like one night of watching TV and this button band that goes all the way around, like for a collar, will be done, and then I'll have just sleeves to do and pockets. I think I have plenty of yarn for that, but if I don't, I can omit pockets, and or I could always go to Michael's or Joann and see if they have more of this. One thing about this kind of large, you know, craft store type yarn is that you know, colors don't often change. They're usually pretty uniform from one lot to the next. So if you run out and years later come back, I've only one time had a color change on me that was obvious, and it was, gosh, it was so obvious. It was frustrating. But she is having, maybe was having, a Fernwood knit along. I'm so slow that I'm probably still doing it and everyone else is finished, but Jane Richmond is. Here's the last thing. I've been really struggling to find time to work on hobby stuff while working more. Everything gets tangled. I'm like, oh, I gotta go to bed, hurriedly throwing everything in a basket, moving it out of the way to work on something. I feel like this is representative of my craft time. It's just hurriedly done in snatches. Grab it, do it, throw it, go. And so after 5 minutes of untangling, this is the very beginning of my coast to coast wrap. It's probably one night's work. It's kind of hard to show it. I'll probably have some pictures I'll have shown at the beginning of this little episode. But it's just the beginning of Alexandra Tavel's take on elements of the landscape, night sky, things like that, mountains, that she traveled past as she went from coast to coast in this country. I thought it was fun, and it makes me think of our trips out west. We didn't go coast to coast. We went Texas to the west coast, and then Texas to just Utah once. But it's been fun to work on, and it's a combination of wool-ease and touch of alpaca. So wool-ease is a wool and acrylic blend, and touch of alpaca is like an alpaca, maybe wool acrylic blend. So anyway, a lot of colors going at once here. 3 are attached, and that is why I had this big jumble. Plus I had that baby blanket. And, you know, this bit of my Jane Richmond, but I'm just gonna, okay. One of the balls just shot across the room. My cat will be finding that. So, I think I've shown you everything I've possibly touched recently. So, I do have this other cake. I thought I had 2 of Sasquatch. I don't know. I have this one, it's gnome. It's kind of bright. But I was thinking about a blanket that Eunice mentioned. I was going to talk about some of the things you guys are just working on right now. And Eunice mentioned, and these are really good stash buster projects, that she was working on A Spicier Life. And that is by Sandra Paul. I didn't know any of Sandra Paul's patterns. You guys turned me on to her patterns as we talked about stash busting. But just take a look at this Spicier Life. Like, it's a granny stripe type blanket, but it's not the same stitch. It's all different stitches back and forth. What a great use of all the weird colors you might have. I think you could magic knot and not worry about a color change with this kind of blanket, kind of like a lot of people do with the granny stripe. I think that the varying stripes, stitch patterns would not make a difference. In fact, it might even further hide a color change with a magic stripe, and I love this idea. Next blanket I want to do that. And I started wondering, would that be fun to do with this? This will probably give me the blanket I was doing in double crochet. It gives about 2 full rows, or maybe 3 of one color, and then it changes to the next. With this Spicier Life, I wonder if this, you know, I'd have like 3 rows of this, maybe 3 rows of the blue, and then the next. I'm wondering if that would make it extra fun. I'm considering doing that. And then if this color's a little too sugary sweet, I mean, little kids love bright, crazy, fun colors, but not many people do a nursery in crazy rainbow. So that might kind of I don't know, make it super cool that it's a very, acid rainbow, because it would also have all these cool stitch patterns going. I don't know. I'm kind of afraid to try too much that's new with a gift for somebody, because then you get weird baby wedge blanket. Other Sandra Paul blankets, though, that you guys have been talking about, Katie's been doing, or is just starting on, the Battenberg blanket, which, again, I hadn't ever seen. That's a great take on, like, Cozy Memories blanket. And I think you can do this work as you go. And then the Crochet Star blanket is one I saw that just came out. And this is really neat because it has that look of a classic quilt, which I love. That makes me think of something my great-grandmother would have quilted. That would really be good if you have, you know, a lot of that background color. This would be a little harder, I think, for stash busting small scrap amounts. But, I mean, you could just do your various stars, you know, use like 4 different colors of stars or 3 different colors when you have a larger amount of worsted weight skeins, and then buy your cream colored background. Thank you for showing me Sandra Paul's patterns. That gives me a little more, I don't know, enthusiasm for using up scraps and crochet. Like doing a crochet gift, another gift, and another, you know. Keeps them from getting kind of boring or stagnant, and gives everybody something different, you know. Some other things Eunice was doing was the excavation blanket. These are all pretty much in the group bundle, and I have a link to that Ravelry bundle. It's in my favorites, but this excavation is very colorful, and that is how Eunice's is. Super bright. It looks like the best thrifty flea market find. But then you see this one. It's Jane Pahota. This one is a lot more uniform in color. Still beautiful. The fringe looks like a lot of fun. And then she was doing a desk set, like desk granny stripe desk stitch set. And that is by Just Be Crafty. And let me just show you. It's like a pop-ups. Do you see the little keyboard cozy, a mug cozy, and a little coaster? There's that. And then also she was doing the painted bricks, like socks by Stephen West, and several people were doing that, similar to the highlighter socks we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Virginia was saying that the Resilience Cowl by Rachel Ilsley is a good one, and that would be a good stash buster. And I see it's here, it's Iran, but you could hold things together and marl, and it's a tube cowl, and those are my favorite. I love the way that looks. So that's like an ombre sort of color changing one. You could do a solid, you could make your own color changing one. Pam is winding up some yarn from Mountain Meadow Fibers. That is in Wyoming, and I actually went there and I just found the place like accidentally, but it was really neat because it's like straight from ranch to the store, and they have a lot of interesting yarns there, and I don't know, it's just a really nice vibe. And she was looking at the Trio Knit Cowl by Mary Beth Temple, because she had a trio of colors like this in neutrals, like a cream to mid-gray and then dark gray. And I think that's really beautiful. And that looks like such a fun use for those yarns. So I think I've talked about what you guys are working on. As far as like things you've been doing recently, She Bear has unsubscribed from some podcasts and quit watching ones that she feels there's a lot of pressure to buy, kind of like we've been discussing for now. And Eunice had done the same thing, or is doing the same thing. Someone had shared, and I told you in the last episode, they unsubscribed from emails because that was a temptation for them. And I shared, I've done that pretty much all together, except for a few designers. I want to see their new designs, or some fiber friends that I just want to hear what's going on in their life. I don't feel a strong impulse to buy from them. But where I do feel a strong impulse, those are the ones I have not canceled. Nitpicks, Lion Brand, Joanne. Nitpicks and Lion Brand is definitely a temptation for me. But they also are always having free patterns that I wouldn't know about if I didn't get the newsletter. And they're not as big a temptation now. I can say, nah, I'm fine. But 2 years ago, I should have unsubscribed. So I get where you're at. Oh, and that resilience cowl is a freebie, by the way. A hand knit letter is collecting all of their Malabrigo scraps to make a pinguano. And I mentioned, go to the Ravelry thread, look at Puck's pinguano, because it is fabulous. With it would be kind of neutral, like gray and black, but there's this a lot of yellow. It's just really great. I love seeing how everyone interprets pinguano differently. I think if I did it, I'd probably do neutral, but who knows. Stacy doesn't have a really big stash, but does have a big bag of scraps, and is going to make the garter squish blanket. To me, this looks like an easy way to use up scraps. Garter squish, and it looks like things are marled and held together with other things, kind of like we've been talking about, and several different, like the Larke Bagger ways of holding things together. Yeah, it's worsted, held with worsted to make bulky. So that's a fun one, and that's also in our bundle. Katinka had said that leaving Ravelry really helped her slow down the pace of her buying, and that knitting FOMO, like, oh, I'm going to miss out, you know. I want to make that too with everyone else. And, you know, when you run your own business, you have a lot of time for crafting, and it's just, I get it, that fear of missing out. It just made her aware of all the neat things and all the neat yarn and stuff she had never had, and she really wanted to take part in it, even when she probably didn't need to. So she just got out of Ravelry, and that helped her. That's how I felt about Instagram. I took some steps back from it. I'm still doing all the stuff I once did, but I don't buy on a whim. So that is the big change that's come to me. I do everything I was doing, but I do it slower. I get on Instagram some, but not a ton. I'm still knitting, still crocheting. I wonder sometimes if this knit along was kind of small, maybe boring to some of you, because I'm not constantly on Instagram showing stuff and giving thoughts. And I have thoughts all the time, but I'm not sharing them in stories. And I wonder, does that make the momentum fall for this knit along? Does it make it less exciting? I mean, I always liked when I did knit alongs, when I would see posts by people who were, and I am in my Ravelry thread, but not all the time. You know, I've thought about whether or not it could have been maybe bigger. More people would have benefited from discussing it. You know, you all would have heard from more people, heard more thoughts about things. Maybe it would have broadened our conversation. But, you know, that's real life. I don't have a lot of time for that. I'm not monetizing this. And if I were to monetize it, can you imagine what I would have to do? I'd be doing shorts, I would be doing, oh man. Yeah, just thinking about that, I'm like, no, I'd probably stop altogether. So my options are to keep things like they are and just do it as I can. And like I said, I wanted to have one more episode before the end of February, but this is the best I can do. And I think all of you are just regular, and you understand that that's real life when you do something just for fun to connect with people. The other option would be I could start my Patreon account, and I could like charge you $5 a month to watch clips of my cat snoring. I know that someone's nodding their head out there to this right now. Like, yes, yes, that's exactly what we're talking about, Michelle. More pictures of your cat snoring. That could have been my gold YouTube short. Dang it. But yeah, so it's small, and I get how, Katinka, you would feel like, oh, you've got to get in the middle of stuff to be a part of it. And there is a pressure to buy. There's also a pressure to be online all the time, which is something we haven't really talked about. It doesn't have a monetary expense, but our time is so valuable, and the cost of having to be online all the time to stay involved, is it worth it? I'm sorry, it's not worth it for me to be on all the time, to keep my knit-along or my podcast or whatever at the front of anyone's mind. May Jo was saying that her background is similar to mine, very frugal culture. And she's continued that even though her children are grown. She still likes to live in a frugal way. And I like that you're doing that and it's all intentional. I had that blip of overdoing it with yarn purchasing, but I'm back to more of a frugal lifestyle, which feels right for me. That's just who I am. And I like that you've been true to yourself that way, May. I asked you some of your podcasts that you watch that are non-crafting, that might kind of distract you away from buying for the hobby you love. And Debbie said she likes to watch, she mentioned Luke Thill's tiny house build. So it's not, I don't know that it's really a YouTube channel, but this one young man, like a teenager, built a tiny house himself and talks about it and documents the process. And it was so cool. Thank you, Debbie. And then also Soft White Underbelly, which, okay, I looked at that, Debbie. Man, that was hard. They're super difficult topics, and some of it is so rough. Like, some of it was just really hard. I don't know how much of that I could watch. It's like a account where this guy is interviewing people, and they're just very frank interviews. And he's trying to he's looking at the broken, the vulnerable places in our country, in our society. Vulnerability is what he's looking at by asking people these very straightforward questions about their lives. And a lot of them have like addictions and or certain kinds of jobs or experiences that are, some of it's hard to listen to. It wouldn't be for everybody. I don't know how much of that I could watch. I probably watched the wrong one for me. It was rough. But I think it's part of it, the idea is to bring awareness to maybe what other people are going through and some of our human condition. So I have that linked in the, thank you, Debbie, for sharing your other podcasts that you're interested in. Anna had recommended My Great Challenge. My Great Challenge, I think it might have a lot to do with frugality, but I know it has a lot to do with organization, kind of taking control of your life, decluttering. And we've talked some about that, right? How we're going to organize our stash. That's some people's like carrot that's making them want to not buy more and de-stash and stash down. So My Great Challenge has a lot of that. And then Rachel mentioned Simple Living Alaska, which is all about kind of frugal living off the land, kind of sustainable living. Really interesting. Different ones about how to make different things or do different things that maybe, especially if you don't live in some place like Alaska, would seem almost novel and unusual. But then there are other things you could probably recreate anywhere. Karen had an interesting one, Diary of a CEO, and it's interviews, candid interviews with CEOs of companies, and they ask them all sorts of questions, not just the typical ones you would think that are very business oriented. I feel like that's one my husband would enjoy watching with me, and we're going to try that one. And then I was going to mention one more that my husband and daughter actually enjoy, Stuff You Should Know. I haven't actually listened to it yet. They may have gotten me watching one or listening to one before, and it sounds like a lot of fun. I just haven't made the time for it yet. So all of that is linked below. All right, so I've shown you everything that you've recommended, my recommendations. We've talked about large yardage projects, tiny scrap projects, big blanket projects. We've talked about one-skein projects. I feel like we've got plenty of stuff, and we have that bundle that you can always refer back to of things to do as you bust through your stash. Now, the knit along is over. Prizes have been given. Use that hashtag anytime you knit from stash if you want to kind of, because I'm going to be looking at that hashtag, and I'm still going to be using it until I have a normal size stash, which will be a long time. You keep going. I mean, anything that's stash is fair game for that hashtag. Continue talking in that thread too if you'd like, and Ravelry, because like I said, this is more than a 2-month thing for me. It's probably more of a 2-year thing. All of your work, you guys have made so many great things. I encourage anyone who's just watching this to go look under that hashtag. I have it linked at the beginning of the notes. And to see some of the things people have made. And then also, I don't know if you guys on Ravelry have been using that hashtag, but do tag your things so people can see them there too, because there's been some really beautiful projects there that I don't know if they're all on Instagram. So I threw this together. I did this because I wanted to talk to you guys. My next episode will be a little more planned. For my question for next week, my question is, what would you like to ask me? You ask me something. Ask me any questions you want, anything you're wondering or thinking about. You know, try to stump me if you want. Where does energy come from? How can God always be? But I thought it would kind of be fun since I really couldn't think of anything. I'm just barely throwing this out here today. So you get the conversation going, please. So if you've been lurking and you don't participate, make an anonymous account and ask a question if you want to, or make a real account and ask a question. And you can ask me via Ravelry or on YouTube if you want. I hope you all have a really great March, and thank you so much for participating in Stash Busting the New Year. Thank you. Bye. Oh my gosh. I'm going to be editing out 5 minutes of yarn tangle.